What would you do if the love of your life betrayed you in the most unimaginable way? This is the story of how I uncovered a web of lies, took control, and delivered a reckoning that no one saw coming. What cut the deepest was standing there, watching her prepare for a night out. She slipped into a pair of sultry lingerie and stockings, pieces I hadn't even seen before. She took her time, carefully applying makeup and perfecting every strand of her hair. Then, she pulled out a dress, elegant, form-fitting, and completely unfamiliar to me, and paired it with a set of high heels that I didn't recognize either. The whole ensemble was dazzling and seductive, yet entirely alien. It was like I was watching a stranger dress up, not my wife. It wasn't for me. She was doing all this for Mark Diamond, her boss. Not her husband. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, dragging in waves of betrayal, jealousy, and anger. She was crafting herself into this desirable, alluring image for another man, a man outside our marriage, while I was pouring every ounce of my energy into providing her with a life of comfort, a stable home, and a loving family. It made no sense to me. We had a great relationship, or so I thought. Our intimacy was strong, our connection deep. Jessica had always been attentive, thoughtful, and loving, never giving me a single reason to doubt her. After 20 years of marriage, I was certain I knew her, certain she would never betray us like this. But I couldn't shake that one evening a month ago at her company's dinner. Her boss, Mark Diamond, the managing partner of the law firm where she worked, was giving Jessica far more attention than I felt comfortable with. At one point, they danced together, and when he looked at me afterward, there was a smirk, just a flicker, but it planted a seed of doubt in my mind. It felt deliberate. I brushed it off at the time, telling myself I was being ridiculous. But the next day, when I mentioned my discomfort to Jessica, her reaction was, off. She defended him vehemently, brushing away my concerns and making me feel as though I was being unreasonable. That defensive tone only heightened my unease, confirming that there was something more to this than I wanted to believe. Suddenly, moments I had overlooked, late-night meetings, missed lunches, and unexplained schedule changes, began to piece together like a puzzle I didn't want to complete. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Something was wrong, and I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Jessica eventually became Mark Diamond's personal assistant. Mark, the managing partner of a high-profile law firm, was the kind of man who loved to display his success for the world to see. Whether it was his fleet of luxury cars, flashy jewelry, or lavish lifestyle, Mark made sure everyone knew he was at the top of the food chain. And then there was Stella, his young, stunning 30-year-old wife, his trophy wife, whom he had married after leaving his partner of 20 years. Mark had a sharp tongue and an ego to match, often cracking jokes at the expense of others. I remember one particular instance during a casual gathering, where he decided to take aim at me and my line of work. For context, I sell screws and fasteners to large retail companies. It's not glamorous, sure, but it's lucrative. I bring in over $200,000 a year, enough to provide Jessica with the life she wanted and to cover our daughter Sarah's college tuition. Sarah was now in her second year, thriving in school. We lived in a good neighborhood, surrounded by friends and comfort. It wasn't a millionaire's life, but it was a happy one, or so I thought. That night, when Mark mocked my career in front of Jessica and others, his arrogance was on full display. "So, Johnny," he said, smirking, "how's life with the nuts and bolts? Must be a real thrill working at Home Depot every day." The room laughed politely, but when I saw Jessica laugh too, my blood boiled. It wasn't the joke itself, rude as it was, but the humiliation of her joining in. Without a word, I excused myself and walked away, my frustration bubbling just under the surface. To Jessica's credit, she followed me soon after, asking what was wrong. I told her exactly how I felt, expecting her to stand by me. Instead, she tried to brush it off. "Oh, baby," she said lightly, "he's just kidding. Mark's the type who loves to tease. You shouldn't take it so seriously. Come on, let it go, he's really a great guy once you get to know him. Against my better judgment, I let her talk me down. But the sting of that moment, seeing her laugh along with him, hearing her defend him, wasn't so easy to shake. It wasn't just Mark's insult that hurt. It was the way Jessica seemed to take his side, even as I stood there feeling small and disrespected. I stayed through the rest of the dinner that evening, though looking back now, I realize I should have left. Reflecting on it, I can't help but wonder how I missed the signs. I've never considered myself foolish or naive, but it seems I may have ignored some glaring red flags. I could understand why people were drawn to Mark. He had that alpha aura, the tall, confident, good-looking guy with wealth and power. As the managing partner at the firm, he was the person everyone wanted to be near. And then there was Jessica, his trusted right hand, his closest ally at work. They were a team, and it didn't matter that he had a younger, stunning wife at home. Mark was the type who wanted everything, and I couldn't shake the feeling that laying claim to another man's wife might be the next conquest on his list. That gnawing suspicion pushed me into action. I wasn't going to sit quietly and ignore my instincts. Over the following week, I put a plan into motion to uncover the truth. Was I overreacting, or was my gut right all along? 6 audio recording devices and 5 high-definition video cameras arrived within days. I carefully devised a system to implement my surveillance. The first camera went into the smoke detector on our bedroom ceiling. It was discreet, perfectly positioned to capture any activity. 2 additional cameras were placed at strategic angles in the bedroom to ensure I had a complete view of the space. The remaining cameras were installed in the master bathroom and living room. Each one featured live streaming capabilities, 8K resolution, and wireless connectivity. I connected them all to a dedicated computer set up in the attic, fully controlled through an app on my phone. The audio equipment was just as carefully planned. One device, cleverly disguised as a pen, was placed next to the kitchen phone. Another was hidden strategically elsewhere in the house to pick up anything I might have missed. Every piece of this setup had a purpose, to either confirm my suspicions or lay them to rest. As much as I dreaded what I might uncover, I needed the truth, no matter the cost. To expand my coverage, I discreetly placed another recording device in Jessica's car. I also hid standard audio devices in her 3 favorite purses and positioned one behind our bed to ensure thorough monitoring. With this setup, I estimated I could capture at least 90% of her conversations and any activity within the house. Despite all my preparations, an uneasy feeling lingered as I got ready for a business trip the following week. Jessica was as affectionate as ever, showering me with love and passion in the way that had always been her hallmark whenever I left town. She began, as usual, with sweet words and tender kisses, wrapping me in a cocoon of love and reassurance. "You know how much I love you, baby," she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. "You mean the world to me, and I'll love you forever." Her words, paired with her heartfelt smile, melted every ounce of doubt I had in that moment. That night was magical, filled with intimacy and closeness that reminded me of why I fell in love with her in the first place. As I held her, I felt so connected, so cherished, that for a fleeting moment, I questioned my entire plan. Was I making a mistake by doubting her? Was I being unfair? But I decided to leave everything in place, just in case. By the next evening, at 6 p.m., I was on the road for the 3-hour drive to my hotel, giving Jessica enough time and freedom should anything questionable occur. The drive allowed me time to reflect, replaying the events of the past 6 months in my mind. Aside from 2 suspicious moments, her boss's condescending smirk and his humiliating comment at dinner, there had been little to substantiate my unease. As my thoughts unraveled, I started to feel like a fool. I smiled to myself, realizing that maybe I was overthinking everything and being unnecessarily paranoid. When I finally arrived at the hotel, I checked into my room and stretched out on the king-size bed, trying to shake off the tension from the trip. After taking a moment to relax, I opened my laptop to check emails, scrolling through work updates before my curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on the link to the server set up in the attic and began reviewing the last 3 hours of footage, unsure of what I might find, or if I even wanted to find anything at all. I didn't expect to find much during this first review. It was mostly a test to ensure the remote access system was working properly. I fast-forwarded through the footage at 3x speed until I spotted Jessica in the bedroom. Curious to see what she was up to, I slowed it back to normal speed. There she was, my stunning, radiant wife, lying on the bed, casually making a phone call. At first, I simply admired her beauty. But then, the content of her conversation caught me completely off guard. It was a call with Mark, her boss. The video camera had captured her side of the conversation, and as I watched and listened, my stomach twisted into knots. "Hello, honey," she said softly, her voice dripping with affection. "He's gone. I'm all alone now, yes, for 2 nights this time. When can you come over? Won't your wife notice you're gone?" She paused, giggling like a teenager. "Oh my God, that's perfect. Can you spend the night? I'd love to wake up next to you." I sat there, frozen in disbelief. Her words continued to play out like a cruel joke. "Yes, of course. I'm all yours, baby. What time will you be here?" "Okay, see you soon. I love you." She hung up, smiling as she lay back on our bed, the same bed where just hours earlier, we had shared an intimate, passionate night together. Jessica had kissed me, told me how much she loved me, and melted into my arms. Yet now, here she was, inviting Mark to spend the night, promising herself to him without hesitation. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Who was this woman? How could she say she loved me while betraying me like this? As I stared at the screen, still in shock, Jessica rose from the bed and began preparing for him. For the next hour, I watched as my wife showered, selected seductive lingerie, and slipped into a pair of high heels I hadn't seen before. She meticulously applied her makeup and spent an eternity fixing her hair, transforming herself into a vision of sensuality. It was agonizing to watch. Jessica had always been a fiery and confident woman, but seeing her go to these lengths for another man, when she never dressed this way for me, sent waves of jealousy and anger surging through me. She wasn't doing this for her loyal husband, it was all for Mark. I desperately clung to the hope that this might somehow be a misunderstanding. Maybe Mark wouldn't come. Maybe her words had been harmless and I'd misinterpreted them. That hope was crushed minutes later. The doorbell rang, and I watched in real time as Mark stepped inside our home. Without hesitation, he pulled Jessica into a deep, intimate kiss, their bodies pressed together right in front of the camera. The undeniable truth stared back at me from the screen. My world shattered in that moment, and I couldn't look away from the betrayal playing out before my eyes. As I continued watching, I captured a close-up of their kiss. The sight of it sent a wave of nausea through me, and for the first time that night, I rushed to the bathroom and vomited. Mark's voice pulled me back to the screen. "Wow, baby, you look incredible in that dress. I can't wait to rip it off and make love to you all night long," he said, grinning at Jessica with a wide, satisfied smile. The exchange gutted me. In that moment, I knew my marriage was over. I told myself it shouldn't hurt as much as it did, but the conversation that followed was what truly broke me. Lying in each other's arms, they spoke with a casual intimacy that cut deeper than any betrayal. "So, your husband's gone for a few nights?" Mark asked, running his fingers along her arm. "Okay, then you're all mine for the next 2 days. I'm so happy you can stay the night, baby. You know I've wanted to wake up next to you for so long." Jessica's response was a dagger to the heart. "I love being with you, Mark. I'll love taking you over and over again all night long, while my husband's out working so hard," she said with a soft laugh. Mark smirked, pulling her closer. "Does he satisfy you the way I do?" Jessica hesitated for a moment before replying, "He's a wonderful lover, but no. He's not like you. You do things to me that I can't even explain." Hearing those words crushed me. I sat there, shattered, sadness and anger mixing with a profound sense of loss. I couldn't watch any longer. I turned off the computer, unable to bear another second of betrayal unfolding in my own home and my own bed. But sleep wouldn't come. I spent hours lying awake, wrestling with my emotions. My mind raced, alternating between fury and heartbreak. Finally, I forced myself to focus. Over the next few weeks, I resolved to act carefully and deliberately. I encrypted the footage into a secure file on my computer and decided that every moment Jessica spent with me would count. I kept her busy. I filled our days and nights with shared activities, ensuring there wasn't a moment for her to slip away for a quick rendezvous or an evening phone call. Despite my efforts, Jessica's questions made her intent painfully clear. "When's your next trip?" she asked casually one night. Though I didn't answer directly, I knew their patience was wearing thin. My suspicions were confirmed one morning when I overheard her phone conversation while she was driving to work. "When will your husband leave town again?" Mark asked. "I'm not sure," Jessica replied, "but I'll find out." "It's got to happen soon, baby." Their determination only strengthened my resolve. Knowing they were scheming behind my back, I decided to plan a trip on my terms. During dinner one evening, I mentioned, "My travel hasn't been cut back yet, so I still need to make trips now and then. Actually, I have an evening appointment next Tuesday, but I'll be back by Wednesday." Jessica smiled, her expression carefully composed, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She thought she had what she needed. Little did she know, I was setting the stage for what came next. "I hate it when you leave," Jessica said, her voice soft and full of emotion. "I wish you didn't have to travel like that. I miss you so much when you're gone." She wrapped her arms around me, pressing a deep, passionate kiss against my lips. In that moment, she made me feel loved in a way that words couldn't capture. But the weight of her betrayal hung heavily in my mind. Knowing that she was giving this same affection, this same tenderness, to another man made me want to scream. Later that evening, I returned to my office and parked my car, heading inside to work late as I often did. A few co-workers were still there, but no one questioned my presence. It wasn't unusual for me to put in extra hours. At approximately 7:30, I received the alert I had been waiting for. The video camera turned on, capturing Mark entering my house and greeting Jessica with a tender kiss. Once again, they were in my home, in my space. I watched the feed for a moment before disabling the camera remotely through my phone app. I slipped my phone into a desk drawer to avoid any GPS tracking during what came next. Quietly, I left the office and went to the trunk of my car, where I had stashed the tools I might need. Arriving back home, I parked a short distance away and approached the house with deliberate care. I stood silently outside for a moment, listening for any sounds coming from the bedroom. Muffled voices and laughter confirmed my suspicions. Confident that my arrival would go unnoticed, I retrieved a short-barreled shotgun and an aluminum bat from the closet. I set the shotgun down against the wall outside the bedroom and gripped the bat firmly in my hands. Slowly and quietly, I turned the doorknob and eased the door open. Candlelight flickered across the room, illuminating Jessica and Mark, who were far too engrossed in each other to notice me. The rage that had been simmering inside me erupted. "Are you seriously in my bed with another man?" I demanded, my voice sharp and unwavering. Jessica froze, her face a mixture of shock and terror. Mark turned toward me, startled, but before he could react, I swung the bat with precise force, striking him hard and sending him crumpling to the floor. He groaned, slumped against the wall, blood trickling from a deep wound caused by the bat. He blinked rapidly, struggling to regain full consciousness. His eyes met mine, filled with fear as he took in the angry man standing before him. "This hurts," Mark muttered, wincing. "Why did you do that?" I clenched the bat tightly, my voice dripping with incredulity. "Are you kidding me? You're in my bed, having sleep with my wife, and you think I wouldn't react? Mark glanced nervously toward the door, clearly sizing up his options. What are you going to do? He asked, his voice trembling. Though fury burned in my chest, I had no intention of doing anything drastic. But seeing the fear in his eyes felt like the smallest shred of justice after everything he had done to my life. The scene in the bedroom was chaos. Jessica was crying, trembling as she curled up in the sheets, desperately trying to cover herself. Baby, please don't do anything stupid, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I love you. I really do. Put the shotgun down, and let's talk about this. I gave her a cold, menacing grin, the shotgun steady in my hands. Shut up, I growled. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Adventures outside our marriage? Whatever happens tonight is on you. Both of them realized how serious this was, and fear flashed across their faces. As Mark started to recover from the blow to his head, I saw him grow bolder. His eyes darted between me and the shotgun, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he made his move, lunging at me in an attempt to disarm me. I had been expecting this. The moment he exposed himself, I pulled the trigger. The blast echoed through the room, deafening, but his screams were even louder. Mark crumpled to the floor, clutching his side. He gasped for air, choking on the pain, unable to breathe without agony. Blood seeped from his wound as he writhed on the floor, his cries piercing the air. As he lay there, broken and bleeding, I spoke with a calm, deliberate tone. Listen carefully, I said. Here's how this will go. I have video, audio, and photos of every moment of your little affair. If you so much as breathe a word to anyone about tonight, I will send all of it, to your wife, to the partners at your firm, and to everyone you know. I've already set up a website with over 2 hours of footage, ready to go live with one click. Jessica's sobbing grew louder as she stared at me, her face pale with horror. Mark, I continued, you're not going to mention my name to the police. You'll tell them nothing. In fact, you'll insist you know absolutely nothing about who did this. And here's the kicker, you won't fire Jessica. She's going to need this job after the divorce is finalized. Mark groaned, too overwhelmed by pain to argue. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. You come after me, and you'll lose everything. Satisfied, I cleaned up carefully. I wore gloves the entire time, ensuring there would be no fingerprints left behind. Before leaving, I gathered all my things, discarded the gloves, and returned the shotgun and bat to my car. By 9 p.m., I was back at my desk at the office, calm and composed. A few IT employees working late saw me and exchanged polite goodbyes as I prepared for my trip. As far as anyone knew, my car had never left the parking lot, and I had spent the entire evening at my desk. It was their word against mine, without any evidence to back them up. If they ever decided to accuse me of anything, their credibility would be easily questioned. Mark ended up needing surgery to treat the damage I inflicted. He had to shave his head to receive 18 stitches for the gash, and the concussion he suffered ensured he'd be off balance for quite some time. Neither Mark nor Jessica thought it was wise to wait for an ambulance that night, likely fearing what the paramedics might uncover. When questioned, they both stuck to their respective stories, avoiding any mention of my involvement. However, Mark couldn't explain why he had been found naked in another man's home. Predictably, his wife didn't believe him, and her doubt quickly spiraled into a significant problem for Mark, both personally and professionally. The following day, I spent the afternoon methodically removing all the surveillance equipment from the house. Every file, video, and image was uploaded to an encrypted cloud server, entirely out of reach for anyone but me. Once I'd confirmed the upload, I disposed of the physical devices, ensuring no tangible evidence remained. Around 6 p.m., Jessica returned home to find me sitting in the living room, calm but resolute. She looked nervous, clutching her purse tightly as she tried to gauge my mood. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice trembling. All of it was for you, she began, tears streaming down her face. I hated being alone whenever you were away. Mark. Mark just kept me company. Yes, it got physical, but it was never about love. It was just sex, baby. You have to believe me. I stared at her, my mouth hanging open in disbelief. Her excuse was as incomprehensible as it was insulting. After 20 years of marriage, this was what she chose to say. Jessica, I said evenly, cutting through her sobs, I've listened to your excuses. You claim all your affection and love were meant for me, but I know better. The words you spoke to him, the ones I heard and watched, were not for me. They were for Mark. Her face crumpled as I delivered the truth she couldn't deny. It's over, Jessica, I continued. 20 years, gone, thrown away because of your selfishness. Our daughter will never know the real woman her mother is, and you'll have to live with that. I'll let you explain to her why we're getting a divorce. But let me make one thing clear, don't you dare paint me as the villain. If you do, I will expose everything. Everyone will know exactly who you are and what you've done. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. I remained unmoved. I'm putting the house up for sale, I said firmly. In the meantime, you need to find somewhere else to stay. This isn't a request, it's what you're going to do. Let me know where to send your things. Counseling, separation, reconciliation, none of that matters anymore. You shared something with Mark that should have been mine and mine alone. That was the final nail in the coffin. Jessica begged, pleaded, and cried for hours, but it was too late. The love I once had for her was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. I'll never forget or forgive your betrayal, I said, my tone final. Once the divorce is finalized, I don't want to see or speak to you again. You will disappear from my life completely. By the next morning, Jessica had packed a bag and left to stay with her parents. I sat in the now quiet house, replaying the events of the past few days in my mind. She claimed she was sorry, begged for forgiveness, and suggested counseling as a way to rebuild. But her words meant nothing now. I knew I would never take her back. The love we once shared had been destroyed the moment she gave herself to someone else. I stopped answering their calls and refused to open the door when either of them came by. Eventually, I changed my phone number, cutting off all contact entirely. I never spoke to Jessica or Mark again. The loss was agonizing, each second of separation a painful reminder of what we once had. But no amount of time could make me reconcile with her betrayal or erase the image of her giving her love to another man. That wound was too deep, and moving on was the only option. Jessica's life, once vibrant and full of promise, had drastically changed. Now 42, she was a single mother living in a small one-bedroom apartment, scraping by on her salary. Her prestigious position working alongside one of the firm's partners had lost its shine. Whispers and rumors circulated that she had been one of Mark's former flings, and she was treated accordingly, with a mixture of disdain and indifference. She hated her job. There were no promotions on the horizon, no close friends to confide in, and no family to lean on. Her own relatives had sided with me in the divorce, blaming her entirely for its downfall. Jessica sank deeper into depression, crying herself to sleep most nights. Her heart ached incessantly, and she was consumed by thoughts of her actions and what they had cost her. Our daughter, Sarah, tried to support her mother as best she could, but even she struggled to reconcile the reality of Jessica's betrayal with the person she had always looked up to. Mark's life, once a symbol of power and luxury, had also unraveled. Stella, his young trophy wife, quickly lost any genuine affection she had for him. Furious at his infidelity, she began dating younger men openly, using Mark only for his money. She stayed by his side at corporate events and business functions, but their personal lives were entirely separate. For Mark, the consequences ran deeper. The injuries he sustained ensured he would never be physically intimate with anyone again. He spent the rest of his life without love, haunted by the memory of how his greed and arrogance had led to his downfall. The moment he decided to take another man's wife marked the point when everything began to crumble. His anger toward me was legendary, but powerless. 6 weeks after it all ended, I started to feel a sense of relief, a glimmer of peace. I had moved forward, leaving the chaos behind. Then, one day, I picked up the phone and called Mark's office. "Mr. Diamond, please," I said, my voice calm and measured. I called Mark's office, and his secretary answered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Diamond is in a meeting. Can I take a message?" "Yes, you can," I said. "Please tell him to meet me at 1 p.m. this Friday at the French deli across the street." The secretary hesitated. "I'm afraid I can't make appointments on Mr. Diamond's behalf." "Just give him the message," I replied firmly. "Write it down, Friday, 1 p.m., French deli. Be there alone. Tell him it's from Johnny, and he'll understand exactly what it means." "Thank you." On Friday, I arrived at the deli early and chose a table facing the door. I didn't have to wait long before Mark walked in, scanning the room until his eyes locked on mine. He looked tense but composed as he sat across from me. Before he could speak, I slid a small card across the table with an address to a website. "Check this out when you're back at the office," I said. "It's hosted through secure servers overseas with 3 backups in different locations. Completely untraceable." Mark's face paled, but he didn't say a word. "You're in trouble, Mark," I continued calmly. "What you'll find on that website is a compilation of everything I've collected over the last several weeks. 2 hours of footage, audio recordings, enough to destroy your reputation." I erased Jessica's face. "She's already paid enough for your sins. But you? You'll have to answer for your actions." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "Now, take a moment and think about how your firm will react when they see this. Think about your wife, your children, your friends, and your colleagues. Imagine how they'll feel after watching it all unfold. And before you say anything, let me be clear, I'm not bluffing." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado clearly waning. "What do you want?" he asked finally, his voice tight. "2 things," I said. "And neither is up for discussion. First, you will stop any retaliation against me or anyone I know, including Jessica. Second, you will deposit $1 million into this account by the end of the day on Friday. If the funds aren't there by 9 p.m., I will act." Mark's jaw tightened. "How do I know you'll actually keep your word and not release the footage anyway?" "You don't," I said bluntly. "But I know what you're worth, and I also know what I could get in a lawsuit. The amount I'm asking for is a fraction of that. Consider it a gift for me walking away quietly." Mark stared at me, weighing his options. He knew I had him cornered, and he didn't dare take the risk. The deal was struck. He paid the money, and I erased the footage. Mark and I never spoke again, though the fallout from his actions followed him for the rest of his life. Jessica, meanwhile, never recovered. She didn't remarry, rarely dated, and spent her days haunted by the pain she had caused. She had lost everything: the man she wanted to spend her life with, her marriage, and her family. By the time she passed away just shy of her 50th birthday, she was a broken, lonely woman. Only Sarah, our daughter, was there to scatter her ashes. As for me, I retired to a small town near the coast, eventually remarrying a kind, loyal woman who restored my faith in love. The scars of betrayal remained, but I found peace and happiness in my second chance at life.